G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Ben Lipschitz from FoodByUs. He's based in Sydney, Australia. Thanks for your time today, Ben.
Thanks for having me, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Sam from the PR Hub reached out and thought you'd be a good guest for our audience.
Oh, that's good of her. She's doing her job.
She's great. She sent quite a few guests our way and really happy with the caliber and the quality. I'm sure you won't let her down today.
No, she'll be on to me if I do.
Yeah. Well, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, sure. So FoodByUs is my business, and we sit as a real one-stop shop between restaurants and all of the wholesale orders that they need to make every day. So a lot of people don't realize, but there's no Coles or Woolies if you're a restaurant. There's no one place you can go to. Instead, it's a phone call to your meat supplier or a text message to your seafood supplier. That takes a lot of time, and not to mention you're not really sure if you're quite getting the best pricing. We solve all of that. So it's sort of like Amazon for a restaurant.
Okay, great. And was there anyone in the market doing this before you started it?
No, there's a few competitors now that have popped up, which is great because it proves we're not insane. We're the market leader in what we do, but certainly when we began, there was no one else doing it.
Great. So what kind of future plans have you got expansion-wise? Is it geographic or adding more products?
Yeah, so at this point with Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, as Australia is, you tend to have covered 80% of the market or whatever it is. So a lot of it for us is value-added services into the network. That means from a supply side, we're drawing live inventory and being able to digitally submit orders to them, really get the admin down on the supply side. But from a venue's point of view, they love using the marketplace, but because we're the middle person, we have to take payments up front. Else we're on the hook to pay the supplier if the venue doesn't pay us. That's all changing. We have a really, really innovative approach now to trade financing. So you can, within seconds, log in, sign up, be approved for terms 30 days later, and get ordering with FoodByUs. And I think that's so important because in a restaurant, if you have a busy weekend coming up, you want to order your food and you want to make it and sell it into something before you have to pay for it. Particularly at times like now, it's Christmas coming up. Restaurants cannot use their current cash flow to prepay for all of the stuff they need when they've got big events on or they're just booked, back to back. And that's why payments is so important for our industry. And historically, it's been suppliers credit checking. Hey, Troy, I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Let's look on some of these credit checking sites, and they'll do a bit of an and an and do I like the look of you and what's your reputation. We've used tech to cut right through all of that for instant decisioning.
So the restaurant will get terms 14, 21 or 30 days, but the supplier gets paid when the order's placed.
Yeah, exactly. So we take that on, we pay the supplier, and then we debit the venue when the time comes.
Genius. That's a great innovation. How did that come about? Was that from customer feedback or?
Yeah, customer feedback, and customer feedback. Like, why do I have to pay up front? I love using you guys. I'm saving time. I'm saving money. All my reporting is crystal clear. You even push invoices into zero. Thank you so much. Why do I have to pay up front?
Yeah, that's great. What a concept, actually asking customers or listening to them what they want.
What's great about hospitality is you got a very vocal sort of chef or owner, and they'll let you know when it's working and what they like. So
it
is a great part of this industry.
Well, that leads us to the next question. How did you start out?
Yeah, so I started my first business after university. There was a footwear company which I worked on for a few years, and I sold that after 5 years and thought, shoes is not my passion.
Yeah,
innovation is, and in our sort of era, the most innovative, I guess, industry you can work in is technology. So I knew I wanted to work in tech, and went to work at a tech startup where I met my co-founders. So after a few years there, we decided we were going to start this business called FoodByUs, and they had involvement in other sorts of marketplaces, in the food industry. And we really began on a bit of a left of center idea, which is, hey, you can get in a car and it's sort of like a cab, it's an Uber, and you can stay at someone's place. It's sort of like a hotel, but it's Airbnb. And, why isn't anyone doing this for food? Why can't Troy make a cake and sell it to his neighbor? And that's where the idea started. It was a marketplace for consumers to sell food to one another. But we very quickly were being hounded by restaurants and cafes saying, we've got this problem, which is what I described earlier, where we've got to order from all of these different people. And, hey, can't we use your software? Can't we use your technology? Initially, we said no. But very quickly, we were kind of realized that we need to shift the model. And that's kind of how we got started is listening to all of these venues say, we've got this problem and your tech is perfect for us. And that's where we ended up. And that's what we do now.
Yeah, great. That's an interesting journey and pivot. What year did you start and how old were you?
We started in 2016. I was 32.
32.
Yeah.
And that shoe business, you said ran that for 5 years. You sold
Yeah.
How big? How many team members did that get to?
So that business was called Flipsters. It's still going today. It was sort of innovative folding shoes for women. When the high heels are sore, they take them off.
Oh, yeah.
Put the Flipsters on. So that was me and one friend. And it was always, we had some casual staff and things like that. But we managed to build that up to 16 countries of distribution. We were sending containers to Europe and America. So it was quite a big thing. And then we were acquired. And as I said, shoes just wasn't my passion. And I was quite happy when we got an offer to exit. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business, Food by Us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we began with a headcount of 5 in 2016. And I mean, now it's 85. So we've grown headcount massively. And restaurants is tracking just over 1,200. So those are active users every month. We sort of don't care who's come and gone. And the suppliers are over 3,000 now. You can access 3,000 suppliers through the network. So we work closer with some in a more partnered way. It gives the user a bit of a better experience, but you can order through pretty much anyone. And we're operating in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Obviously, it was founded in Sydney in 2016. So yeah, that's sort of us. And 2022 has been a good year. We've 2.5 times this year from January to November. Double and a half. So pretty happy with that, considering prior years COVID influence. And obviously, we didn't get quite the growth we would have wanted.
Yep. And you don't handle any part of the delivery, like you don't consolidate orders. It's just a platform to put suppliers in touch with the restaurants.
Yeah, and I think that's a key benefit of the model, is that we can grow volume massively and we just forward it through to suppliers who already have 40 trucks, plenty of staff, they've got their routes. So for them to pop a few extra sort of orders on the truck is not a big deal. And for us, as we grow, we don't have costs that are sort of scaling. And that's, I think, a challenge if you're a sort of menu log or a DoorDash or Uber Eats, is that the more orders you get, the more drivers you need.
Yeah.
And we intentionally didn't ever want to get in that situation.
Yeah, good. Very smart. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I don't think we've succeeded. I really, any entrepreneur will tell you it's just an ongoing journey. I do feel we had a really good product market fit when we started opening up the network to restaurants. Like I said, it was originally homemakers. And we started to see the really good data coming in. That is higher average order values, really good repeats. What else have you got? I'm already buying fruit, veg. Do you have meat? And so on. And that's where we started to see the data tick over. And whilst I wouldn't call that success, I would call it a bit of an aha moment that, hey, this thing's got legs.
Yep. What does success look like to you?
I think that running a profitable company that has a meaningful impact on an industry is success. So, our vision is ordering software so good you wouldn't run your restaurant without it. And if you decide tomorrow you want to open Troy's Burgers or whatever your chosen restaurant name is, you're probably going to use Xero. You're probably going to use Square. You might use some reservation software like OpenTable or Fork or whatever. We view success is you just wouldn't start that restaurant without Food by Us. It's too important a software to not have, and that kind of space in the sort of hospitality industry, that's where we want to be.
Yeah, great. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
I think that you absolutely have to have an awareness of what your customers' problems are. And I would start slow and steady and cheap whilst you work those out. There is no point splashing big marketing and big sales and expense where you just do not understand the problem that you're trying to solve. You're going to pick the wrong channels, you're going to pick the wrong messaging, and it's going to cost you a lot. I think that AdWords and a lot of these other more sort of historically more innovative channels to market are actually very expensive now. And you can get burned very quickly thinking you're getting lots of clicks, thinking you're getting lots of traction, and it's just not coming through. So have a real think about what it is you're trying to solve before you start to market and scale that marketing.
Yeah, good advice. How did you fund the business?
Yeah, so marketplaces are interesting because it's really chicken and egg. Okay, you have to get the right suppliers first. Then you get a few buyers, few suppliers, few buyers. That takes time and that takes money. So we did a round in the beginning, a small round. I think we raised $1 million, and we have over the years grown it and raised a little bit. So we've got some very good venture capital partners, but the days of raising, I think, are behind us, or soon will be, because really we're getting to a point of size where we don't need that money anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Well done. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I think there's still a lot of really, really good problems to solve in hospitality. And I think that there's a whole ecosystem of technology where some of it's been done well, some of it's not. But in all cases, I think if you've got the capability, and in your example, you said the funding, I would, because it's a massive opportunity. And these businesses really need help in the sense of they're so fragmented. I mean, there's 90,000 small restaurants in Australia, something like 30 or 35,000 on Uber Eats or Menulog alone. And they're all independent. That means plenty of problems to solve. So yeah, if you can do it and you can listen to the industry, yes, would be my answer.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, there's no shortage of them.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest challenges about a marketplace business is that as you grow, you have a lot of pains that you never really anticipated. And now you have to solve a whole new set of problems that you thought you'd solved, and you thought you'd solve them forever. So I think a really good example of that is that the more we started feeding through to suppliers who for years had been saying, I'm sitting on your network, where's the volume? I need to kind of be proven up that your crazy marketplace idea works. Then started getting so much in the way of business that all of these daily orders coming through, and we'd only just email them in a PDF, was too much admin. So then the complaint switches to, why are you sending me so much paperwork? I've got staff that have to input the Food by Us orders into my system every day. Now we've got to integrate, which we've done now when we submit them digitally. But the interesting thing about that is that you're always looking to grow as a small business. And then when you reach that growth, you've got a whole new set of problems.
Yeah.
And you've use a completely different mindset, I think, to solve that. But that's the job.
Yeah, that's it. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think as an initial founder, you're very keen to get your hands dirty in everything, and you want your DNA in the business. Delegation is the answer to that for me. I think as the business grows, you have to accept that your leaders and your team are better placed than you to do many of the tasks.
Yeah.
I think there are people in my team who are better delegators than me. I learn from them. And I think that's something that I've really worked on over the years.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Delegation. No, I do think growing a team and managing people is definitely a challenge. In the beginning, things happen quickly. There's less discussion, and you see the fruit of your labor really, really. It's almost instant, and it's a good feeling. You feel like I got through a lot today at the end of the day. now I go home in a week or a month and saying, got through, feels like less. But you're doing more, you just don't kind of feel it or see it as much. So I think managing people is always a challenge in any business, but particularly in a founder sort of led business. As you grow, you've got to keep an eye on the culture, the people, and make sure that you're sort of doing a good job as a manager. All of that is very, very challenging as you grow.
Yeah, totally. What do you love most about growing a small business?
I think that it is really exciting on two fronts. I mean, one is the impact you can have in this industry. And you really start to see restaurants referring you. You really start to see Google reviews where they say, literally, FoodByUs saved my business from going under. It's really touching to have a meaningful impact in that sense. I love that. That drives me every day. The other thing is the growth in people. Seeing my team grow as individuals, as managers, seeing their personal journey almost in some ways mirror their professional journey and how they're growing has just been so rewarding. And some of these people I've worked with for 4, 5, 6 years now. And they're very close to me in my life. And I think that's incredibly rewarding too.
What is the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest mindset is basically let's not solve the problem for today. You feel really good about solving problems in the beginning, but often it's with sticky tape. Those problems then turn into bigger ones down the track. So the mindset shift for me very much has been, yep, it's urgent. Yep, I see it's a problem. Yep, you're all freaking out. I am calm as a leader. Don't worry. A and B, can we structurally solve this in slightly longer way so that we don't have to come to this so soon after? Whereas I think more in the beginning, you're just like, yep, let's get that done and solve, and you feel good about it. And then, not too long after, you're almost back where you started.
Yeah. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Look at the numbers every day. I mean, we had that homemade food business. We're looking at the numbers every day. What was our churn? What was our repeat usage? What was our average order value? Very quickly, when we shifted into restaurants, the numbers made it clear that we were onto something. Every day, me and the whole team look at the numbers. We use Tableau. Everything feeds into that. There are tons of dashboards, and the entire company has a relevant dashboard for them that they literally will look at first thing in the morning every day, last thing before they leave. And I think that drives good performance.
Yeah, definitely. What can be measured can be managed.
Yeah.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. This is a great question for you. You've gone from 5 now to 85 team members. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, so adding people, look, I would put it in 2 phases. I think phase 1 is I was very involved in the hiring. I think if you're a founder and you're delegating that in the beginning, big mistake. You're the one, I think, who has to really build the company that you want, and that means the people that you want and the culture. I've always taken an interest in looking at resumes, interviewing people firsthand, trying to record, I think, the results of those so that I can A, see for myself, but B, share with others as they came into the business how I'm doing it and how they can do it. That was sort of phase 1. And I think advice in that is take it very slowly. I mean, it's very often said, hire slow, fire fast. And I think that's very true. So whilst we had processes and tried to move people through a recruitment, I guess, procedure relatively quickly, so we're not dragging out, we weren't sure, we needed another meeting, or we need to insert something here, or we needed them to meet additional people in the business, or we just had a sense that we wanted to take it a bit slower, we did. And it has always paid dividends. The second phase, I think, is then when you get sort of heads of people and talent, and that's how we sort of moved up towards 85 people. And with them, I would say, regardless of their background as a recruiter and, of course, their skills, sit with them as a founder and explain your vision, your company, and how you do it. Because no matter where they've come from, they've never done it in your environment. Yeah. And so I spent countless hours with our head of people and talent, really at a deep level, explaining what this company means to me and what it means for a person to be interviewed and be hired. I think the final piece of advice on building is if you're having doubts about someone and you sort of feel like you might need to let them go, it's probably the tip of the iceberg. Your team knows a lot more than you. And normally when they leave, you find out the whole story, because no one wants to throw anyone under a bus. But I would say be very attuned as a founder to who you think might be underperforming, because that little inkling you might have probably runs a bit deeper. I'm not saying make a rash decision, but I think I have found that often after people have left the business, it is the real, I guess, sort of a whole iceberg, I might say, gets shown. And as a founder, I would be really conscious of that.
Yeah, good advice. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think culture is what you do, not what you say. That is what I always say to my team. So, yes, you need values. Yes, it needs to be articulated, but I think it's in how you behave, and it goes from the top down. If one of our values, for example, is that we're data-driven, if I'm making calls as a CEO and in the face of data, it's just not the right call, no one's going to take it seriously. My team will pull me up when I'm in any way acting that might not be in 100% alignment with the values, and good on them. They should. So that's kind of one thing. But then another is that I would embed the values in every day of what you do. So I don't think that you write the values on a wall and everyone sees it when they walk in and yay, it's the values. That is a complete waste of time. And all you're really doing is say, look over there are values. How do you put it into your performance reviews? How do you put into your weekly wraps where people can actually shout each other out and actually refer to the values? And how do you, I guess, reward people for not just living the values, but I guess acknowledging that one another are living the values.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of my favorite Peter Drucker quotes, which is behavior is believable.
Yeah, exactly.
You can say all the shit in the world you want, but unless you actually follow through with action and do it, no one's going to be, it's not authentic. So
yeah.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
It's funny. So in my first business, I was younger and took a lot of pride in just working insanely hard. And then I wouldn't say burnt out, but really kind of missed the point, which is some things you can delegate, some things you don't have to do, some things can wait till tomorrow. So balance for me and my, this being my second business, is about drawing really hard lines and say, yep, I will go home at this time, or I will allow myself to have a weekend. That's important, especially as you grow, because as a manager, especially we're at 85 people, if I come in a cranky mood because I've been working all weekend, yay that I got the work done, but guess what? The whole team is going to see my energy, and now I've just got a massive drop in productivity. And I've had that before. Team members come to me and say, you were having a bad day last night. And they've picked up on it. So I think that's one element of balance. Exercise is a big one for me as well, is really waking up and just trying to move your body in whichever way works for you to clear your mind and come in sort of, ready to commit to the day. That's a big one for me as well. And just not forgetting that family, friends, and your other commitments are equally as important.
Yep. How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
I don't think I've done nearly enough professional development or focused on it enough, because I've always tended to seek out individuals who I think are able to teach, and I can learn from, I guess, mentors in a sense. And they might be from different industries. They might be in the same industry. They might have a particular, I think, perspective on a problem that I'm facing at that point, and I'll be open and share with them. And that's sort of how I've tried to develop. I'm not great, I think, at going on a more structured professional development course or anything like that. I like it to apply and be real, and I like for the person to kind of understand and share where I'm at, and hopefully they've been there too. That's where I just get the most value. I think I'm just a terrible student, basically.
You haven't had coaches?
No, I don't think that coaches in a formalized sense works for me. I don't want to pay someone or have that as a commercial arrangement.
Yep.
I want or have always gravitated towards authentic mentors who don't owe me anything and yet are putting time and effort.
Yep.
Because they're the ones that tell it how it is. And I think commercializing that, I don't know, but I guess my feeling about that is I'm just not sure that you're going to get the true, real advice or guidance that you need.
Yep. Now, you've got other people's money in the business. I assume you've got a board of directors.
Yes.
How big is it and how often do they meet?
The board is only 3. We have considered expanding the board over the years, but we have not really found, I guess, anything lacking. And whilst it is good to get a lot of opinions, it doesn't always mean that they should be, on your board. And lots of opinions at certain junctures in how you're trying to do the strategy might do more harm than good. So we meet every quarter. It's a formalized process in the sense of going through the numbers and any strategic issues we need to cover, as well as voting. But it's absolutely done with good governance. But so far, we haven't ever come at a point where, like, if we had more people on our board, we might sort of have navigated that better or whatever.
And do you have any independents on the board or someone sharing the board?
One of our investors, I guess, I would call them independent in the sense that they're not involved in the business.
Yep.
And they are beneficial as well in adding, I think, a perspective on what else is going on with their portfolio, what else they're seeing, of course, introducing us to any other companies that might be able to share knowledge. So I would call that independent. Yes, they have an equity stake in the company, but it's by no means a majority, and they're certainly not operational day to day.
Yep. You're one of the few we've had on that's exited a business. You got any advice for the audience thinking about exiting?
Yes, the acquirer doesn't care how much effort you've put into anything. So just throw out the window any emotional points where that design took you ages or you built the brand up over this amount of time. The acquirer cares about the value that you add to their business, and that is the sole lens that they're going to look through. And so what we found in the process of getting acquired is all the things that we'd really put so much into heart and soul were, fine, and they delivered to the bottom line. But the acquirer in our case was very interested in the brand. It was this Aussie folding shoe sort of innovative brand, and they wanted to build product around that. And that was the main thing. Whereas we really cared about the design or the fact that we were sold overseas and all of these other sort of channels to market. And, who cares, right?
Yep.
So I think remove yourself from the sort of emotional effort that you may have put in at various points in the journey.
All right, Ben, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think that the hardest thing is this weird balance that I've always found you have to have between being really dogged about we're going to do this is going to work, perseverance, and pushing hard for what you want. And suddenly the other balance is being flexible and totally open to changing your mind.
Yep.
And it's a weird sort of dual state to occupy in your mind as an entrepreneur. But we really wanted homemade food to work. And then the data said otherwise. And we suddenly shifted to restaurants and it worked. But, how can you be so dogged and yet able to change is, I think, a real challenge.
It is a fine balance, yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
There's a lot. I like to read business books. I think Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 is brilliant.
It's a great one. He's ex PayPal Mafia.
Yeah, he is, with some interesting personal views and political persuasions, but ignoring that, his actual book 0 to 1 talks about 1 to infinity is really optimizing something and getting it to scale. But 0 to 1 is that initial idea of really getting something off the ground and what it takes and how to do it. And he's a crystal clear thinker. And I think he's a great book for anyone who's got an idea or thinking of starting their own business.
Yep. Any other? Do you want to throw a couple other books out there?
I love biographies. I read Phil Knight's Shoe Dog biography, and obviously that's struck a chord close. Given
Nike.
Yep, Nike. So the history in the footwear business was interesting. There's also a book by the Netflix founder Reed Hastings called The No Rules Rules. It's a book about culture, and Netflix does it really well. And I think that book is a great book for anyone who's sort of starting to scale and has quite a few people, and they're really wanting to understand how we can embed a culture that scales. Because one of the hardest things about a good culture is that the more people you get and the more cities you're in, the harder it is to maintain.
Yeah. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I I think there are a few that are interesting. I don't necessarily use them for professional development. Adam Grant has one on, I think it's called Work Life, which is interesting. He's got a sort of psychologist background, and he'll interview different sort of organizational psychologists. I listened to one lately called All In, which is, it's not for everyone, but it's just super interesting to hear the perspective of these four guys who are basically in venture capital. Talk about, they do a bit of politics and things like that, which I think is, may not be everyone's flavor, but when they talk about the venture capital industry, startups, tech, and kind of what's going on in AI or what's going on in biotech, it's so interesting because they're right at the cutting edge. They're super smart, and they've got very interesting ways of, I think, predicting the future. That's the bit I like. I would recommend that, but you just kind of sometimes have to tune out when they get into political rants.
Yeah. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Do you mean in terms of a sort of software or?
Yeah, it could be anything. Could be.
Look, it sounds kind of obvious, but I think some of the tool set, the software set that you pick at the beginning can really guide your business and how well you work as a team. We're on the Google Suite, and in the beginning, it's just I need email, and I need whatever the slides. What you find over time as you scale is that it's a very collaborative, easily scaling piece of technology that really helps your team work together. And I think a similar thing for Slack. In the beginning, we had Skype back in 2016. We thought Skype's fine, it's free, we'll all use Skype. Once we switched to Slack, we rapidly saw just how crazily effective teams can get, and how much they can integrate with across what's happening in the company. So, I mean, these are well-known tools. I don't think there's sort of any secret about it, but you want to think hard about the kind of company you want to build in the long run, because some of these things, like picking Skype to, when it's early in your business, it then becomes a bit of a mission to change. Yeah.
Right. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
I think a lot of founders would say that you wouldn't want to talk to yourself at day end you wouldn't want to talk to yourself on day one, looking back sometimes in the sense of it's going to be tough. But I would say talking to myself on day one would be, hey, enjoy the journey. Just have fun on the ride. Because, and this was especially the case with my first business, the daily stresses and really having no idea what I was doing. I mean, that one I started when I was 24, fresh out of uni, made infinite mistakes. And we exited. And, when I look back, I thought the exit would be the happy moment. And it was, but I think what was actually more interesting and what served me better in life is all the sort of ups and downs and painful moments.
Yeah. And
I actually, in hindsight, enjoyed that more, and it served me better. So yeah, day one would be just enjoy whatever's about to happen to you.
Great.
Better for your health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Ben. I've really enjoyed the chat, and I'm sure the audience get a lot of value out of it. Congratulations on the growth in 6 years, going from 5 FTE to 85, and helping and serving a lot of great suppliers and restaurants out there, and disrupting the industry here in Australia.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. It's been fun.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcasts to help with their growth will find us.